meeting for May 3rd.
Hold on, they don't have all the stuff running quite yet.
Nobody can hear you. That's good. Okay, then. 9 o'clock, we'll call the Land Use and Information Committee meeting for May 3rd, 2022 to order. Notice has been posted in accordance with Wisconsin Statute 19.84 Open Meeting Law. Next on the agenda is the election of chair, vice chair, and secretary. We'll run that.
Sure. Do you have any nominations for chair?
I'd like to nominate Norm Bickford as chair.
Okay, Norm nominated by Brent, seconded by Chuck Anderson.
I could move to cast a unanimous ballot for Norm.
Second.
Motion to cast a unanimous ballot by Mr. Conroy, seconded by Mr. Blomberg. Any other nominations? And all in favor, say
Aye.
yes.
Aye.
Okay, so Norm, you would be chair.
Okay.
Congratulations.
Take over.
And you want to take over or should I
Sure.
do like? You good? Okay.
We'll have nominations for vice chair.
Nick Craig Conley.
Nomination for Chuck Anderson for Craig Conroy. Are there any other nominations? Are there any other nominations? None? Does anyone wish to make a
We'll
motion?
make a motion that we close the nominations and cast a unanimous ballot.
Motion by Chuck Anderson,
Second.
second by Brett. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Next, we have secretary.
Actually, I'll decline. I've done the vice chair and the secretary thing, and yeah, I've had enough of that. But I'd like to nominate Supervisor Payton as secretary.
Nomination for Mr.
I'll
Payne.
second that.
Why would that be?
Any other nominations? Any other nominations? Is there a motion? Yes, a unanimous ballot.
I'll make that motion.
Motion by Mr. Brumford, second by Mr. Conroy. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Next, we'll have public comments, 3-minute time limit per person. I have no one listed of people that wish to make this general public comment. Are there any general comments at this time? If not, we'll move on. Next is the approval of the agenda order.
Make a motion.
By Mr. Payton,
No,
second by Mr. Anderson. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Approval of the minutes from the April 5th, 2022 meeting.
Motion to approve the minutes.
Motion by Mr.
Second motion.
Second by Mr. Payton. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Next, we'll have start number 7, public hearing. Mr. Cowles, please read this notice.
Notice of public hearing, State of Wisconsin, County of Burnett, Tuesday, May 3rd, 2022 at 9 a.m. at the Burnett County Government Center, Room 165, Town of Mina, Siren, Wisconsin, regarding the following: Burnett County Land Use Shoreline Protection Ordinances, Map Amendment, MAP 2204, Ray and Becker, to rezone the northwest quarter of the southeast quarter located in Section 33, Town 38, North Range 14 West, Town of Dewey, from A exclusive ag to A2 agricultural residential zoning district. Zoning change requested by Rochelle Becker. As a note, conditional use permit CUP 2204 goes along with this request. Details of proposed revision are available at the Burnett County Land Service Department, Burnett County Clerk's Office, and the Burnett County website. Conditional use permit CUP 2204 Ray and Becker. Public notice hereby given to all persons in the town of Dewey, Burnett County, Wisconsin, that Rochelle Becker has made an application for a conditional use permit for the terms of the Burnett County Land Use Code of Ordinances to allow a campground with one rustic campsite located at 22525 Gravel Knoll Road in the A2 zoning district in the northwest quarter of the southeast quarter, Section 33, Town 38, North Range 14 West. Note map amendment MAP 2204 goes along with this request. Conditional use permit CUP 22051 in Steinmetz. Public notice hereby given to all persons in the town of Siren, Burnett County, Wisconsin, that David Lund and Norma Steinmetz have made application for a conditional use permit for the terms of the Burnett County Land Use and Shoreline Protection Code of Ordinances to construct a duplex on a residential parcel at 24108 Clam Lake Drive in the RR1 zoning district, parcel located in Government Lot 4, Section 11, Town 38 North, Range 16 West. Conditional use permit CUP 2206 Redditch. Public notice hereby given to all persons in the town of Siren, Burnett County, Wisconsin, that Jeff Redditch has made an application for a conditional use permit for the terms of the Burnett County Land Use and Shoreline Protection Code of Ordinances to construct a 93-unit manufactured home park on approximately 31 acres over the next 3 years, located on Luverne Road in the RR3 zoning district, parcel and government lots 11 and 12, Section 5, Town 38 North, Range 16 West.
Okay, thank you. Next, we will start on public hearing on rezone request map 22-04. Ray and Becker, rezone A to A2. Applicant, please come up and state your name and your.
Rochelle Becker, and I don't know what else to say. We're here for the. We want to rezone to 10 acres, or 10 acres to A2 from A agriculture. We've gotten permission from our township. We went to the township meeting, and the township has given an okay, and our neighbors are all giving an okay. So we're here asking if we can rezone 10 acres. We actually just wanted 1 acre for a little rustic campground, a rustic tent for in one acre of our 10 acres of our 40.
Questions from the committee?
Well, a comment, I discussed this quite a bit with the town chairman, Dwayne Johnson. And this is actually an amendment to not rezone the entire 40, but just 10 acres of it, which we felt was fine because that's less than the original application. The town would prefer, and I think that owners would prefer not to rezone any more than they have to. And the only reason we're even talking rezoning is it's not provided for in the A district. We did provide for this kind of camping facility in a A2 district with association with some ag use, hay fields and other things qualify. And the only comment I would make is that I think this is what we intended, really. But if we're working on the ag stuff, if we would happen to somehow provide this in the A district, maybe we would want to, at the county's initiative, rezone them back to A. But for now, the only way they can do it is in A2.
What part of the parcel is the 10 acres?
It's the southeast corner, so it is the,
Basically where the 1 acre was, but it's just
yes,
going to be,
yeah.
so what's the size of that
We just-
10 acres, do you know?
What is the size of 10 acres?
Yeah, 300 by,
Well, if it's, the southeast quarter is what they're trying to do, so it'd be 660 by 660.
okay.
Yep.
Right, and that's the least we can really do for the rezoning purposes.
Any other questions for the applicant?
The only reason I asked that was because it was not documented on here.
But that was an amendment sought after the publication. So we're essentially, if we want to do it, I'll make a motion to amend the application down to 10 acres as described. And then we'll cover that aspect.
Question by Mr. Conroy.
issue.
Is there a second to the,
I'll second.
second by Ms. Muslin? All in favor? Okay, now I'll open the public hearing and ask if there are any public comments from the public. Go ahead, Ted.
So I can sit down?
I have no other comment, no other public comments listed for the public hearing. You did hear from the town, Jason, right?
Yeah, they will send us a letter at, when they, after they meet at their next meeting, saying they approve the 10-acre request. We should have that letter before county board.
There's nothing else. I'll close the public hearing at this time. And the rezone request, on any rezone, the committee's recommendation is just to go to county board with this rezone request. So at this time, since there's no other public comments, is there a motion to send?
I will move to approve the rezoning as amended and to forward that to county board.
There's a second. Second by Mr. Blomberg. And on this, I always request roll call vote, so start at bottom. Ms. Anderson? Ms. Mullen?
Yes.
Mr. Peden?
Yes.
Mr. Blomberg?
Yeah.
Mr. Anderson?
Yes.
Mr. Conroy?
Yes.
Mr. Bickford, yes. Request has been approved to go to county board to change the zoning from A to A2. Next, we will consider the permit request CUP 2204 Rain and Becker Campground with one rustic campground. Want to explain? Go ahead.
I have a rustic campground where it's just a tent. They have to carry in, carry out, so there's nothing permanent on the site, and all garbage and human waste is removed, camper, and that's what you need.
Is there any questions by the committee?
Pretty minimalist, and it was one of the sort of things we were encouraging, so.
This is going to be to different people all the time, not just one person.
Yes, it's like a Airbnb kind of, so it's like you can rent it for a couple days, night, yeah.
We have to have sanitary.
I should address sanitary facilities and.
And they're all, it's a carry in, carry out kind of camping, so, like with rustic camping, they need to carry everything out with them. So they take their waste and garbage and everything. We have a little, a loo there with some of the either composting, toilet, or they can use a compostable bags that are meant for waste, human waste. It's a commercial product that's available.
And if at some point, if you wanted to, you could get a permit for some kind of sort of privy if you felt a need, but you don't have to as long as you've got it addressed, I think.
Okay. It would be if we did get, it would just be I would just do a on-surface composting toilet. I wouldn't be doing anything. I don't do anything.
They're kind of spendy, but they do work. So.
Yes, we have one, we've used one before.
Any other question, Stromberg?
Would this be strictly camping by people bringing in a tent?
No, there is a tent, we provide a tent. It's, so it's glamping. It's basically a glamour backwoods kind of camping thing. So there's the tent, and it's actually on a platform, which stays on the ground. It's a queen-size bed, so it's very comfortable, actually. But they'll bring all their stuff in, and then they take everything back out with them.
You provide the tent
We
then?
provide the tent, and
But people wouldn't be coming in with a camper or anything
no,
like that?
No, not coming in with camper. There's, it's farmland, so, it's not really pleasant for, like, if someone's gonna put a tent up, the ground is pretty rough, so I don't think they'd even, we're not planning on that, and I don't think anybody would wanna try, 'cause
But the platform will already be there.
the platform will be there, yeah.
Do they have to put the tent up, or you?
No, tent
Put
is
it up.
up, everything is up, they can just,
Move in like you're moving into an air.
yeah, just move in
Yeah.
and have a lovely little evening in the tent.
What about cooking facilities?
There is, the tent has a heating cook stove in there, and, then just a fire pit outside.
A cook stove inside.
It'll be used outside, but yeah, there's a little cook stove, yeah, a little propane cook stove. So all of the, it's like, it would be like if someone did just come in and pull their camper in, except that it's all provided already.
Other questions? If not, I'll open the public hearing at this time. I have no listed person wishes to make public comments. Is there anybody in the audience wish to make a comment? If not, I'll close the public hearing. Is there a motion for CUP 2204, campground with one rustic campsite?
I'll make a motion to approve that, conditional use permit.
Second that?
Second by Ms. Anderson. Roll call vote.
Were there any items to be included in the motion?
Just follow the local, county, state.
Well,
Actually, I have 7 of them listed in there, but
yeah. Did we want to look at that before we?
For the 7,
you're probably looking at the rezone, you have to go to the conditional use permit one.
oh, you're probably right.
That was why we didn't have it up.
Page 44.
I'll read the conditions. 1, rustic camping units shall meet the various county, state requirements. 2, land use permits to be obtained for all items before construction location. This includes all decks, patios, sheds, etc. as required in campground. No recreational vehicle transfer tanks shall be used. Any PO pouts to be serviced, maintained at the required interval. 5, a copy of the state campground license be provided to the county land services department within 9 months of this approval. 6, a toilet facility is required prior to operation. This could be a pit or vault privy. Permit will be needed for prior to construction. 7, follow all local, county, state, and federal requirements for this activity.
Question on number 6, being that it's, in there it says it a pit or vault, but we just gave them.
Yeah, you can, I'm just reading what the definition is on the state code, and they can have, like a box latrine, portable toilet. So I would say, as long as they have some sort of toilet facility that meets the state requirement, that would be okay.
It's a portable.
Yeah.
And they're, yeah, a little box,
Yep.
composting.
Do we want to limit it to a single site, any expansion?
Well, that was, their application was only for one site, so if they came in and wanted more, yep.
If this works, is there room, can they have more sites?
Well, they'd have to come in and ask,
Yeah.
but yeah, they could go up, A2 allows up to 25 sites.
This is kind of following the county forest path on the camper cabin, same idea, a single site, and that's all they got. They need to do, to expand this would require coming back for a CUP.
Make a motion to accept with the conditions.
Yeah, it is, Mr.
Yeah,
Payton.
I'll add those 7 on to the,
Yeah, and then who made the second?
Yes.
Would
Yes.
would that be acceptable to
Yes.
you?
Have a motion, a second. Approve the 7 considerations. Ms. Anderson. Roll call vote.
Yes.
Ms. Mullen.
Yes.
Mr. Payton.
Yes.
Mr. Blumberg.
Yes.
Mr. Anderson.
Yes.
Mr. Conroy.
Yes.
Mr. Bickford, yes. Conditional use permit 2204 has been approved.
Thank you.
Goes along with the rezone, which it'll be taken up to the county board for the rezone. Next, we have conditional use permit CUP 2205, London Steinmetz duplex on a residential parcel. Applicant, please.
Norma Steinmetz. We would just like to add an additional living space onto our property.
Is there any questions of the applicant?
Is it just for rental or? No, it's just for us. It's not ideal to add on to our current structure, so we want to keep the existing structure and add a new structure.
Did notice a mound system out behind. Will this mound system be sufficient for both of them?
Yes. It'll be a 2-bedroom total.
Any questions of the applicant?
You asked the question I would have asked, so it's, by code, we can do by occupancy or by bedrooms, and as long, it'll be required as part of the land use permit to evaluate and assure that that's okay, so. Nothing we need to go further with than that.
Any other questions of the applicant? If not, I'll open the public hearing. Is there any public comment on CUP 2205? I have none listed on the list. Wait a minute, go ahead. Your name is Norma?
Yep.
Okay, I do have that on the list, so. That is the only one I have on the list. We did receive a letter from the town.
Correct. Stating they have no objections as long as they follow all zoning requirements.
The only thought that comes to mind for me is it's listed as a duplex. Let's say down the road you want to sell it, would they then be required to put in a second septic?
No, duplex can be all connected to one sewer system, so as long as the duplex, they have a 2-bedroom bound right now, as long as there's not more than 2 bedrooms in the duplex total, so 1 and 1, they're fine going forward. Now, if they wanted to add a bedroom or something in there, then they'd have to upgrade the sewer system.
Any other comments or questions? That I'll read the staff's recommendations. To consider approval, 1, land use permit to be obtained prior to adding on to the existing structure. 2, bedrooms in the entire duplex not to exceed the septic sizing. 3, follow all local, county, state, and federal requirements for this activity. I'm hearing the staff recommendations. Is there a motion on CUP 2205?
Sure. I'd like to make a motion to approve CUP 2205 with the 3 staff recommendations included as part of that motion.
Motion by Mr. Blumberg. Second by Mr. Anderson. Comments from the committee? If not, Approval of CUP 2205, Ms. Anderson.
Yes.
Ms. Smalley,
Yes.
Mr. Payton,
Yes.
Mr. Bamber,
Yes.
Mr. Anderson,
Yes.
Mr. Conroy.
Yes.
Mr. Bickford, yes. Conditional use permit 2205 has been approved. Next, we have conditional use permit 2206, Redditch, 93-unit manufactured home park.
Morning, Board. First of all, I'd like to thank you for your time, your consideration, your service to Burnett County. My name is Andy Hurst. My wife and I, along with our 3 children, are residents of Siren. In the not-too-distant past, you are all probably aware, my business partner and I applied for an RV park in this location. We did so thinking it would be a good investment that would also bring economic stimulation to Siren. When that was voted down, we accepted that decision, and then we asked ourselves, Plan B, what could we do that would be both celebrated and welcomed? As we looked into our options, we read through the county and township comprehensive plans, as well as the county code of ordinances. We identified affordable housing as a clear and stated problem in both the county and the township. Our proposal is to build a manufactured home park that provides quality homes at an affordable price. As my partner and I discussed this plan and dug into the details, we felt comfortable that this property would be a wonderful location for many families to call home, raise their families, and contribute to the population, taxation, and economic stimulus of Siren. As you will see, our proposal is protected by Act 67 and is consistent with the county and township's desires noted in the comprehensive plan. Let me begin with discussing Act 67. A brief review of the legal standards. State law, Act 67, governing conditional uses, which includes special exceptions. 1, substantial evidence. Quote, means facts and information other than merely personal preferences or speculation directly pertaining to the requirements and conditions an applicant must meet to obtain a conditional use permit and that reasonable persons would accept in support of a conclusion. End quote. Wisconsin Statute 59.69 5E A2. Number 2, permit must be granted if conditions met. Quote, if an applicant for a conditional use permit meets or agrees to meet all of the requirements and conditions specified in the county ordinance or those imposed by the county zoning board, the county shall grant the conditional use permit. Wisconsin Statute 59.69 5E B1. Third, conditions must be reasonable and measurable. Requires that any conditions specified in the ordinance or imposed by this committee, quote, must be reasonable and to the extent practicable, measurable, end quote. Wisconsin Statute 59.69 5E B2. So I looked at the Burnett County Zoning Code. This project qualifies as a conditional use under code because specific provision has been made for the use under Burnett County Code of Ordinances, Section 30-851. It states, the following are the uses authorized by conditional permit RR3, residential recreational districts, manufactured home parks subject to the provisions of Article 5 of this chapter. Article 5, Section 30-542, mobile home manufactured home parks. Except as otherwise specifically authorized, no mobile home intended for occupancy shall be located in the county except in a mobile home manufactured home park, the plan of which has been approved by the County Land Use and Information Committee. Such parks shall meet the following requirements. Requirement 1, minimum size 5 acres. Our project is approximately 31 acres. Requirement 2, maximum number of mobile home manufactured home sites, 6 units per developable acre. This is agreeable and acceptable. Our project is approximately 3 units per developable acre. Requirement number 3, minimum width of a mobile home manufactured home site, 40 feet. This is both agreeable and acceptable. Our average site is approximately 75 feet wide. Requirement 4, maximum height of a mobile home manufactured home, 20 feet. Height is measured as shown in Chapter 45 of the Burnett County Ordinances. This is both agreeable and acceptable. Requirement number 5, the distance between the separate mobile homes and manufactured homes shall not be less than 30 feet. This is both agreeable and acceptable. The average distance between manufactured homes in our development will be approximately 45 feet. Requirement 6, minimum distance between mobile home, manufactured home, and service road, 10 feet. This is both agreeable and acceptable. The average distance of manufactured home to service road in our development will be approximately 30+ feet. Requirement 7, all drives, parking areas, and walkways shall be hard surfaced. There shall be 1 parking space for each mobile home or manufactured home, and additional parking spaces for automotive vehicles within the park, totaling not less than 1.25 parking spaces for each mobile home, manufactured home space. This is both agreeable and acceptable. All drives, parking areas, and walkways will be hard surfaced with gravel. Each manufactured home will have parking spaces for 2+ vehicles. Requirement number 8, no mobile home, manufactured home, sales office, or other business or commercial use shall be located on the mobile home, manufactured home park site. However, laundries, washrooms, recreation rooms, maintenance equipment storage, and 1 office are permitted. This is both agreeable and acceptable. Requirement 9, minimum side yard setback, 40 feet at all front, side, and rear lot lines of the mobile home, manufactured home park. This is both agreeable and acceptable. Requirement 10, each mobile home shall be placed on a mobile home stand. The stand should provide for practical placement on and removal from the lot of the mobile home and retention of the home on the lot in a stable condition and in satisfactory relationship to its surroundings. The size of a development will be acceptable if it is suitable for the general market to be served by the individual proposal and fits the dimensions of mobile homes anticipated. The location of each mobile home stand shall be at such elevation, distance, and angle in relation to the access street and the mobile home access way that placement and removal of the mobile home is practical. Appropriate material, properly graded, placed and compacted so as to be durable and adequate for the support of the maximum anticipated loads during all seasons should be used. This is both agreeable and acceptable. Requirement 11, all mobile home manufactured home parks shall be screened in accordance with Article 7 of this chapter. Our proposal shows we are leaving a native buffer for screening around the property, as well as a native buffer between each site. The feeling of being up north and in the woods is important to us. Requirement 12, all mobile homes, manufactured homes, shall meet the required construction standards. This is both agreeable and acceptable. Requirement 13, mobile home, manufactured home parks shall comply with the sanitation regulations of the County Sanitary Code and the appropriate requirements of the Wisconsin Administrative Code. You received written correspondence dated 4/25 from Teresa Anderson with MSA. At the Township of Siren Sanitary District, otherwise known as the Forced Main Sewer, that is connected to the Village of Siren Wastewater Treatment Facility, has plenty of capacity for this development. Although it has now come to our attention through submitted correspondence dated 4/18 and submitted 4/28 that the Township of Siren, quote, has concerns over its construction. The plan does not show any well placement or septic systems. This property is not in our sanitary district, and we do not plan to add this property to our sanitary district. End quote. Well placement has not been predetermined, as location and system design will be designed in combination of our engineer and the well contractor. Although it is unfortunate that the Township of Siren has chosen to not allow us to connect to the sanitary district, we fully accept their decision and have already advised engineering we will need to move forward with the required on-site wastewater treatment system or systems to meet the demands of our development. Requirement 14, each manufactured home shall be placed on a foundation meeting the appropriate requirements of the Wisconsin administrative codes. This is both agreeable and acceptable. Requirement 15, a land use dwelling permit from Burnett County must be obtained prior to replacing, rebuilding, or structurally altering a mobile home manufactured home. This is both agreeable and acceptable. So how did we arrive at housing being a demand? First of all, in the Burnett County 2030 Comprehensive Plan. I'm sure you all know it by heart. Section 2, population and housing. It states, Burnett County's plan for population and housing is to be prepared for projected growth and to encourage the development and redevelopment of housing that contributes to the fulfillment of county and local comprehensive plans. 2.6, population and housing goals and objectives. Goal, facilitate opportunities for an adequate housing supply that will meet the needs of current and future residents to have access to a full range of housing choices for all income levels, age groups, and special needs. The objective of that goal, encourage innovative housing design for efficient, low-cost, high-density housing. Another goal, to guide new housing development into areas that can be efficiently served in a fashion that does not impact scarce natural resources. The objective of that goal, support opportunities for high-density residential development. Another objective of that goal, direct residential development to planned growth areas. Another goal, support housing development that maintains the attractiveness and rural character of the county. The objective of that goal, direct the development of large residential to planned growth areas in order to prevent conflicts between residential development and productive land uses like agriculture and forestry. Then we also looked at the Town of Siren Comprehensive Plan. I'm sure you've all seen and reviewed that. Section 2.4, population and housing trends and outlook. Interest in modular and mobile home development will continue as driven by need for affordable housing. Secondly, finding quality, affordable housing will become increasingly difficult. In section 2.9, there is about population and housing goals and objectives. Township of Siren goal, facilitate opportunities for an adequate housing supply that will meet the needs of current and future residents to have access to a full range of housing choices for all income levels, age groups, and special needs. The objective of that goal, encourage innovative housing design for efficient, low-cost, high-density housing. Another goal, to guide new housing development into areas that can be efficiently served in a fashion that does not impact scarce natural resources. Objective of that goal, direct residential development to planned growth areas. So our plan. We have engaged with both MSA and NWBE, Northern Wisconsin-based engineers, for all required final site plans, engineering, stormwater retention, wetland issues, erosion control, wastewater management, etc. Our plan only calls for 93 units. Some might say that's a lot. I would say we only are requesting 93 since the maximum density per code would allow 186 units. We are proposing a low-density project of 3 units per acre, giving each site a shaded buffer on 3 sides to preserve attractiveness and rural character. Planned urban transition. Our project is located in a land use management area that is defined as planned urban transition. According to the Burnett County 2030 Comprehensive Plan adopted in 2010, the purpose of planned urban transition is to plan for areas where residential uses will occur at higher densities. This is a rough draft of our guidelines for living. Our clients will all have to agree to our guidelines for living as part of their lease agreement. This will include rules and regulations such as drug and alcohol use, business activities, children, guests, firearms, fireworks, garbage, trash, home and site maintenance, pets, vehicles, no open air storage, use of the Gandy Dancer Trail, as well as others. I am a licensed real estate salesperson in both Wisconsin and Minnesota. I did a quick search of existing inventory yesterday. Under 200,000. The increase in prices over the last few years has pushed many people out of the market. From Danbury to Luck, there is 8 listings under 200,000. Of course, every one of these homes has issues. You could buy something that's 100 years old. You could buy a house that needs an awful lot of maintenance. You could buy a house that needs basically to be stripped back to the studs. There's even a house, one of the 8, that has no water, no sewer, no bathroom. I'm also a licensed general contractor in Wisconsin, and the price to build has pushed many people out of the market. New construction. First, we got to buy a lot. We got to clear a lot. We got to put in a well, a septic, pull in power. This can easily surpass $75,000 and is often very, very difficult to finance. Now we're ready to build, but new construction of even a simple home can easily surpass $300,000. Look, we need affordable housing, and that is exactly what we are proposing. We are already in the process of working with Village Homes out of Pine City. They currently have 4 different manufacturers. All are HUD certified homes. They range in size from 1 bedroom, 1 bath to 3 bedroom, 2 bath. Square footage from 600 square feet to 2,000 square feet. And people can get into a brand new unit for as little as $80,000. Even a 2,000 square foot, 3 bedroom, 2 bath, they can get into for $200,000. Review your Burnett County staff report. I'm sure you've all taken a good look at it. I won't read the whole thing, but I will touch on some key issues. We start with the comprehensive plan, the purpose, the goal, the preferred use, the recommendation, and recommended policies. In 2021, the town of Siren added the following language to their comprehensive plan, section 8.11-LU11C, quote, use and site designs, including but not limited to campgrounds, solar, and wind, electrical generation, and CAFOs are compatible with adjacent uses in terms of aesthetics, scale, hours of operation, traffic generation, lighting, noise, odor, dust, vibration, and other external impacts, and does not have a detrimental effect on adjacent landowners and/or communities, end quote. Our proposal is compatible with section 8.11-LU11C, and I confidently say that based on this analysis. This is the existing zoning map. I'm sure you're all fully aware of that. This property is currently zoned RR3, which would allow me currently to put 6 lots for 1 single family residence each. These residences would have no guidelines for living that they would have to agree to, meaning every homeowner would be free to do as they please. Unlike our clients that will be agreeing to abide by our guidelines for living, these residents would be free to partake as they please with drugs, alcohol, business activities, children, guests, discharge of firearms, fireworks, garbage, trash, pets, vehicles, open air storage, and even how they choose to deal or access the Gandy Dancer Trail. Of course, there are township and county ordinances, but nothing that will even come close to as strict as our guidelines for living. And none of these uses would require a conditional use permit. There's also a neighboring property currently zoned commercial. This district has 22 categories or permitted uses that would not require a conditional use permit. There is also a neighboring property currently zoned industrial. This district is intended for manufacturing and industrial operations that would not require a conditional use permit. Clearly, our project will comply with Town of Siren Comprehensive Plan, Section 8.11-LU11C, in relation to what zoning already exists and what types of development can occur that are already permitted with no conditional use permit. Our proposal will have less impact in regards to aesthetics, scale, hours of operation, traffic generation, lighting, noise, odor, dust, vibration, and other external impacts, and does not have a detrimental effect on adjacent landowners and/or communities than any of these other uses that are already permitted and require no conditional use permit. Let's continue with just a few more items on your report. Possible, I'm just going to review a few and then respond. Possible items to resolve, address, other concerns brought before the committee from other parties, neighbors, public, Town of Siren, state agency, other county departments, etc. Written correspondence received as report compilation, email from Teresa Anderson, MSA engineer, with comments about the Siren Municipal Sanitary District system, email from county and state officials about access to the Gandy Dancer Trail, emails from 2 neighbors with various concerns, comments, and questions. Staff concerns, if the committee wants to require additional screening, then they need to be specific with type, height, width, location, etc. The Gandy Dancer Trail doesn't allow ATVs, UTVs, golf carts on this section of trail. More committee discussion might want to take place on how the applicant will prevent ATVs, UTVs, golf carts from the manufactured home park accessing this trail. My responses. MSA Sanitary District. As I already indicated, we have already accepted the decision of the Township of Siren and are moving forward with plans for on-site wastewater treatment system or systems that will comply with the sanitation regulations of the County Sanitary Code and the appropriate requirements of the Wisconsin Administrative Code. In response to the Gandy Dancer Trail, 1, our lease with our clients will contain our guidelines for living. There will be rules and regulations related to the usage of the Gandy Dancer Trail. 2, we have an area dedicated for people to access the Gandy Dancer Trail. We have already been in communication with Jason Nichols, who is the administrator with Burnett County Forest and Parks, as well as Daniel Yankovic, who is the recreation liaison, Bureau of Parks and Recreation Management with the Wisconsin Department of Natural Resources. We want to, and we will do this right to ensure that the Gandy Dancer Trail is used and accessed legally. 3, we already have our application in hand from the DNR, prepared to submit upon approval of our conditional use permit. Whatever guidance that we are given by the DNR is what we will do to ensure safe, secure enjoyment of the Gandy Dancer Trail. Another item from the correspondence, the neighbor's driveway. This is a copy of the legal easement. This driveway is, quote, a 33-foot wide, non-exclusive easement for ingress, egress, and utilities across our property. I am required by law to provide this, ingress, egress, and utilities, which we will continue to do. But this is still our property, and I still have rights to develop within the guidelines of the Burnett County Municipal Code. Approximately 2/3 of the existing driveway will be upgraded by us at no cost to the neighbor, and it will even be maintained by us at no cost to the neighbor. Another issue, screening. As I said before, our proposal includes 20 foot of screening, leaving native vegetation. We do not believe any additional screening is necessary, as we have designed large spaces with native vegetation on all 3 sides. Our intention is to leave as much native as possible to provide the rural up Northfield we believe our clients will be looking for in a location for their new home. Let's continue with your report. If considering approval, then the following items may want to be included in the motion. Item 1, a complete manufactured home park map shall be completed for the entire site and filed with the zoning office, signed by a licensed architect, engineer, or surveyor, which shows the manufactured home park layout, location of all buildings, structures, roads, property lines, setbacks, screening, water supplies, sanitary lines, utilities, recreation areas, and any other information the Land Use and Information Committee shall deem necessary by 10/1/2025. This is both agreeable and acceptable. Continuing on, any proposed changes in the approved manufactured home park shall be presented to the zoning office for approval. No implementation of the proposed changes shall take place until written approval is received from the zoning office. I'm assuming this portion of the comment is in reference to changes to the plan that will be submitted at 10/1/2025, and then if we intend to make any changes. I was a little vague on that statement, which we can discuss when I'm done. Item 2, manufactured home park units to meet all local, county, state, and federal requirements. This is agreeable and acceptable as of the date of this application. Item 3, if the committee wants to require additional screening, then they need to be specific with type, height, width, location, etc. We have addressed this issue. Item 4, if the committee wants to additional protection to prevent ATV, UTV, golf cart, or other prohibited uses on the Gandy Dancer Trail, then it should be specific with those details. We have addressed this issue. Item 5, all manufactured homes shall be connected to the Siren Municipal Sanitary System. We have addressed this issue. Item 6, verification of proper connection to Siren Municipal Sanitary System to be submitted to the Land Services Department prior to manufactured home park operation. We have addressed this issue. Item 7, a copy of the state manufactured home park license must be provided to the County Land Services Department within 3 years of this approval. This is both agreeable and acceptable. Item 8, land use permits to be obtained for each manufactured home prior to construction placement and prior to any manufactured home being replaced. This is both agreeable and acceptable. I would just ask, get me a copy of the land use permit as of the date of this application that is required so that we can have it in our records. Number 9, follow all sign regulations. This is both agreeable and acceptable. Item 10, follow all local, county, state, and federal requirements for this activity. We have followed all requirements as of the date of this application, and we will continue to do so. Had to add this one at the end since there was some written correspondence that was received just yesterday. I will address this letter from Patrick Hansen specifically, as he appears to have an opinion on most every issue before the county. Item 1, he begins, quote, "This project should be required to have a metered connection to the Village of Siren sewage system," end quote. This project is actually in the township of Siren and not the Village of Siren, which as the crow flies is almost a mile away. Also, the township of Siren has already chosen to deny the connection to the township sanitary system. Being that he actually lives in Iowa and not Grantsburg like his letter is signed, I guess that would explain his confusion. He continues, this requirement, quote, "This requirement protects the health, safety, and economic welfare of both current and potential future area residents." I'm sorry, but this is simply an uneducated statement. The issue of how wastewater is handled already has a very thorough process in place. There's state codes and county ordinances. The county code already requires me to provide, just in the application, I have to provide the name of the state licensed plumber who will perform the installation. I even have to have approved plans, system plans that comply with state code. As I have already shared, we will be having our engineer for the project coordinate this within the scope of their work. He continues, quote, Please do not rely on representations from the developer or others about how wastewater will be handled and paid for as part of this project, end quote. I'm sorry, but I take offense to these accusations. It appears to me that he is attempting to persuade this committee that I am, or I am going to, break the rules, or I am not to be believed when I speak about the issues of how wastewater will be addressed. Simply put, our wastewater treatment system or systems will be designed, permitted, and installed according to the state and county code. His second point, Section 30-542 of the Burnett County Code of Ordinance states that, quote, all mobile home, manufactured home parks shall be screened in accordance with Article 7 of this chapter, end quote. This is why we have proposed leaving a 20-foot wide native buffer for screening purposes. Article 7 further states that, quote, any use or conditional use listed in this chapter requiring screening or fencing shall be permitted only when authorized by the County Land Use and Information Committee and subject to its approval of a screening or fencing plan for that particular use, end quote. His third point, he references Section 30-633 in part as, quote, town board approval may be requested for conditional uses, end quote. But he leaves out the majority of the code at the beginning, which states, quote, any conditional uses listed in this chapter shall be permitted only when authorized by the County Land Use and Information Committee and subject to its approval. Upon such approval, issuance of a conditional use permit will be granted, end quote. According to your own zoning administrator, on a conditional use permit, the town input is advisory only. In regards to this conditional use permit, the town of Siren was properly notified, and they even formally responded with their letter dated 4/18/2022 and filed 4/28/2022. In this response, they identified two, quote, concerns. Well placement, we have addressed this issue. Septic systems, they do not intend to add this property to sanitary district, and we have addressed this issue. No other issues were addressed. The town of Siren made no mention of additional approval for this conditional use permit. The town of Siren made no mention of any concern over the use, improvement, or maintenance of Laverne Road. Then he goes on to add, quote, the county should further establish unequivocally whether the proposed project meets the applicable standard in Section 30-542(2), which states that, quote, maximum number of mobile home, manufactured home site, 6 per developable acre, end quote. The county GIS maps show 3 wetland points on the proposed parcel, end Patrick's quote. We understand the statement, but this is clearly a red herring. Maximum density according to code is 6 units per acre or 186 sites. We are 50% of that density. Let it be stated that these are recognized as, quote, wetland points and not WDNR wetlands. There is a significant difference between the two. We and our engineers are fully aware of the wetland points, and it will be addressed accordingly. He ends his concerns by stating, quote, to do anything less would be to invite a challenge to this project in court, end quote. That is now the second time in this letter he has made mention of this ending up in court. We have followed all the rules to submit our application. We didn't open this line of dialogue about court, but we are perfectly content with this going to court, as our law firm Larkin Hoffman has advised us to proceed with confidence. And I'll remind the board that Act 67 requires substantial evidence, quote, means facts and information other than merely personal preferences or speculation directly pertaining to the requirements and conditions an applicant must meet to obtain a conditional use permit, and that reasonable persons would accept in support of a conclusion, end quote. Wisconsin Statute 59.69, 5E(b)(1). We believe we have met the conditions for obtaining a conditional use permit for a manufactured home park. Under Wisconsin Act 67, we have a right to receive the conditional use permit. We request time after the public comments to address any concerns. Thank you for your patience and time.
Are there any questions or comments from the committee for the applicant at this time?
I have one to start, as soon as you get back up.
Go ahead.
Have you got any address or thought of the, kind of the demographic of the population this would serve? In other words, are you talking about lots of young families with kids school district would be interested in, or more retired people, or, you know, somewhere in between? Any thought on that?
Well, I believe there's a demand for, I mean, we've already been contacted just because people have found out about this, of some people that are retired, their spouse has passed away, they're looking to downsize, you know, that this would be something that they want to look at if or when we get our approval. But I also think there's immense value. You know, I mean, we've evaluated, do we make it a 55-plus park? I don't think our demographics here are there yet, you know, so I think there's huge value for younger families, you know, to be able to get into something that they can afford. Not only that, it's new, you know, there's no maintenance, there's very little anticipated expenses when they're able to get into something that's new. So, considering from a contractor's point of view, what it costs to build something new today when they can get into this for half of the monthly expense, I think that's a huge value to younger families.
I'm gonna wanna, down the road here, talk about the septic issue and the sanitary district issue, but not right now.
Any questions from the committee? Yes, go ahead.
My first question is, you mentioned that a new unit would be about $80,000. You threw that out as a number, and you, said this would be affordable housing. What are you proposing you're gonna charge for association fees or their monthly fee to have their home parked on your site?
Our current analysis with initial projected costs for installation is right around $300. And that includes, you know, hook up to all the utilities and, you know, power. And I mean, they would of course be metered to pay their own power just like anybody else, but obviously they would have no expense of dealing with power, water, sewer. You know, we would take care of road maintenance. We have a couple, we have at least one dedicated right now, kind of a park area, you know, that would all be maintained by us as well.
You're saying $300 a month lot rent?
That's our projected rate right now.
Okay. The other thing you mentioned is all the policing, all the rules that you're gonna have implemented in the park. Who will be policing that?
Well, I actually live about 3 miles away, so, and so, you know, that each person will have their lease, their agreement, their guidelines for living, and then obviously everyone will have our contact information. We don't intend on, you know, having somebody driving around with binoculars or anything like that, but, you know, it will be available for, and then of course, just from our regular maintenance, you know, I mean, addressing like open air storage. You know, it's pretty easy for me as I'm going through the park on a regular basis to evaluate whether that's happening and, you know, being able to go up and, hey, Mrs. Peterson, you know, just need to be aware of the rules, you know, you can't store this stuff here, you know, and then obviously deal with it accordingly.
And then it also sounds like you want new homes in there only, so someone wouldn't be able to move from one park and then come into your park.
And bring an older unit. Most likely, all of them will be new. From the realtor side of things, you know, me, my wife, and my son are all realtors, so we're constantly speaking with people. And so we have not determined whether we would set any hard, fast rules. We may have, there would at least be a date, like your unit can't be more than 5 years old or 10 years old. But most manufactured homes don't get moved. You know, if someone wanted to move to our park, most likely what would happen is they would sell their unit where if they lived in a unit somewhere and they would purchase a new unit to move into our park. It's highly likely, depending on kind of how the demand happens, it's highly likely that, you know, it would all be brand new units, so. But we have not finalized a final, that's it, you know. So it may occur, but I highly, highly doubt it. If the demand's high enough, we would then invoke all units need to be new clause. And any, any storage buildings, like if somebody gets a little porta shed or something like that, we will have part of our guidelines for living that they have to paint that to match the colors, of their manufactured home. And everything would kind of have a timeline, so like, if they get a unit, we're like, hey, I saw you got a new storage unit, doesn't match, they would know in their guidelines for living, it would state you have 30 days, to get something like that painted. And then after 30 days, if it's not done, clearly I'm gonna go knock on the door, hey, Mrs. Peterson, so.
Is that the same for garages? Is that the same for garages then? Yeah.
I don't know that well, anything's gonna have to be portable. We don't, want it to, everybody to put in as big as something as they can.
I know the mobile, or the manufactured park up on County Road U, they all have garages.
Fine, that's what that owner wants to do.
Yeah.
Yes.
So would the tenants be owning the manufactured units? And then they would be leasing the ability to be there, and you would retain ownership of the land?
Yes, we would own the park and all the utilities that are installed for operation of the park. They would lease their space, but they would buy whatever unit that they want to put on. We don't intend to buy any units, put them there, and then put them up for sale. There's so many variables. If you were to go to villagehomesmn.com, you can go through their manufacturers, you can see what's available. There's a lot of, preconceived notions of trailer parks and, having a bad rap. But if you were to go look at some of these homes, you would see that clearly, younger families or people with not as much means would take a lot of pride in being able to live in some of these units. They're really, really nicely done. You're welcome.
I guess my question, and it might even be for some of the committee members, it is along the Gandy, and, not just the Gandy specifically, but if there are activities that occur that aren't allowed, because right now, I'm sure it was there prior to you purchasing the property, there is a cleared access point to the Gandy, which I don't believe is, currently legal, but it's cleared so that, people can access it. What would be your proposal for remedying things if someone does something, let's say, they cut trees in the Gandy? I mean, is that up to the DNR to enforce, the county to enforce? Are you going to be policing that and just say, well, we need to remedy this because you weren't supposed to cut that tree down, or we need to replace the trees that, so there isn't this illegal access to the Gandy?
You referenced cutting trees down in the Gandy?
Well, no, the Gandy, the right of way there, I think, is 50 feet on either side of the Gandy. And so, you can't remove trees or anything in that property, but people do. It's at the back of their property. They're going to cut, if they cut firewood. I guess I'm just wondering, how do you handle that? And I just know, because living on the Gandy and using the Gandy frequently, I see lots of things happening. And so just if you had anything in mind on how you would make reparations, or how you'd expect them to, or how you would police that. So
on our proposed screening buffer of 20 feet, that will be in the guidelines for living, that they can't do any improvements in there. They can't remove any trees. They can't put anything for storage back there. They can't mow it back there. That has to stay 100% native. That's on our property, so I have control over establishing guidelines for that, and that's what we've designed. And like where the Gandy is, so we would have 20 feet of native, and then the Gandy probably has around 40 feet of vegetation before you get to the trail in the center of the Gandy there. So there's about 60 feet there. If someone were to go on the Gandy dancer side onto their property and cut trees or break the rules, some of the guidelines for living that people are going to be signing to and agreeing to is that if you get in a certain amount of trouble, you're going to lose your lease. And so they would be forced to then sell their unit and go find somewhere else to live. So with the ultimate consequences that if they're egregious violations, Like, the Gandy Dancer Trail is an issue for us. You and I have sat and talked about this in the past. And we're 100%, we don't have a position one way or the other. We're 100% in just abiding by the rules. And when I specifically, in dealing with this, we knew with Gandy was gonna be an issue. It's kind of a hot topic around here. We don't have a position one way or the other than to promote its use. So I actually was in email correspondence and, phone correspondence with Daniel Yankovic with the DNR. And one of the reasons why we have the application through our process of discussion was, I'm like, look, in my plan, I have called for a single location to direct traffic onto the Gandy Dancer. But yet in our plan, there's, I don't know, maybe 30 units that actually back up on our property to the Gandy Dancer. And then in the conversation with Daniel, I said, the reason why I want to figure out how to legally work with the DNR to provide access is so that we can have in our guidelines that it is a violation for people to cross off of their lot directly onto the Gandy. I said, I really don't want 30 different walking trails that end up being exposed coming onto the Gandy because it's going to be very convenient to do so. But I said, if we have legal access and we can make it clear and improved and put some signage on our side, little signs, you know, access here, and have rules in our guidelines for living, you know, we're confident that we'll be able to keep everyone accessing it in that single location. And I think that would be of value to try to maintain, you know, the looks of the Gandy Dancer with that minimized. Now, we have not had it surveyed yet. I don't believe there is any actual access off of the Gandy onto our property yet. I'm not exactly sure where the pins are, but I would say I'm 95, 98% positive that's not on our property.
And that was another thing. It's like I did do a brief site visit, and since things weren't staked, I couldn't tell where I was.
Yeah.
You know, so I really didn't know what I was looking at.
I do have an app that would give me I never even thought about doing it because obviously we just aren't doing anything out there at all. I do have an app that'll get me very, very close to, and I can go look at that. And if there is some sort of somebody accessing it there illegally, I'm perfectly fine with putting some boulders out there or whatever if it's on my property.
Talked about newer homes. Some of those manufactured parks now say none older than 2009.
Oh, ours would probably be much newer than that, yeah. We would probably do like a 5-year cutoff, simply, and the only reason, and this is back to Ms. Mullen's question, the only reason why we potentially would give somebody a break on the year cutoff is that if they recently invested in a home to go into a park, but then they go, we really would value being in this park more, you know, that's a lot for them to absorb. You know, hey, we just bought a unit, we just put it in 4 years ago, but we wish we would have known this park was gonna open because we would have gone over there. You know, if an event like that occurs where they go, will you accept it? Then we would accept it. But once you go back 10 years, that's probably not, we would probably make our cutoff somewhere like 2017.
You also talked about a mobile home stand. Well, what do you mean by the stand?
Well, I didn't, that's the code. So, you know, you'd probably have to go see it for yourself on a display with the manufacturers. The manufacturer, or not the manufacturer, but the retailer, Village Home, does all the delivery and setup to meet the county code. So.
I know some of the ones that we have now, the parks, have cement slabs on the bottom, and they're all anchored, meet the guidelines by HUD.
Yeah, well, the stands, it's not like a kickstand, you know, I mean, the stands are still required HUD anchoring to the stand, so just, I guess, you know, if you want to put it on a slab, you know, there's many out there, obviously, I mean, just across the way on Horseshoe Drive, there's manufactured homes there, and some of those are on a slab, you know, so that was their choice during the installation.
And then each one of these would be required to be inspected by a building inspector who's hired by the town of Siren.
That's fine.
Right?
I mean, I think if I understood the code correctly, each unit still requires a permit in the setting process, and then it would have an inspection. Obviously, it's probably more of just a final inspection than anything else, because there, you know, there isn't a rough electric and rough plumbing and stuff like that that needs to be inspected before it's covered up. So the construction standards of all these are meeting the HUD standard. You know, that's what's coming, you know, is already a HUD-approved and certified home. So, I don't know, I mean, Jason can probably speak more to the details of what would be required from inspection.
It's basically gonna be the anchoring point and the utilities are correct,
The hookups.
connected correctly and
Yeah.
stuff.
I know, you know, we've been through it with you on campground. The question always came up, well, is there a shelter in case of storms? And I do not believe the manufactured homes that we have in the county now have that type of shelter. I just wanted to make sure that when people ask that question, that, you know, it's already covered. You know, people are gonna be no different than me living in my house, or you live in your house. You're gonna probably stay in your house if there's a storm where these people would be doing the same thing. And they're supposed to be to 90-mile-an-hour winds, is what I think what the manufacturer calls for us, which is more than a lot of our houses would be.
And right now, we don't have a requirement on every house we built on a basement. You know, we have lots of people, especially on Clam Lake and things, that are required to build on a slab, essentially, floating lake purposes.
I just, you know, in case the people out there make that as a point, as a question, you know, how come you don't have a storm shelter? Like I said, I don't think we required any other manufactured parks, so it probably wouldn't in this park.
I have not specifically looked it up in the HUD regulations that these are all built to. I'm assuming there's a standard there with the way the tie downs of the stands are and so forth and so on. I'm not exactly sure, you know, I can't speak to what it is specifically. But I'm sure there's a standard for that it does meet. And clearly, you know, you're probably right. Someone will probably ask me that question, and I will be sure to get that information up in the old computer.
And Chuck did ask a question about the garages. My understanding that you as the owner pay the real estate taxes, and the person that has the manufactured home pays personal property on that home. Is that correct?
In Wisconsin, there's two different ways you can do it. You could have it where the unit is assessed as personal property, and that owner, let's say Mrs. Peterson is the example, she would get a personal property tax bill. Or the other way you can do it is there's a manufactured home park licensing requirement that the township can do, and that's where they assess a fee to each unit. The park owner collects that fee and then transfers it to the township. So either way, there's money being collected for the value of the unit.
That's one of the questions we got with campgrounds. They don't pay their fair share. I asked Jason, you know, if he could find out what the individual would pay for personal property tax. I don't know if you did or not.
Well, it's based on the unit, you know, like he was saying, you could have a unit that goes from $80,000 to $200,000. They're gonna assess it based on how nice the unit is.
But they have, you know, they are paying their fair share.
Yeah, and either way, you know, however it gets determined on the county or township ends is up for you guys to decide, you know, and then it's for me to comply. Obviously, those would be part of the pass-through expenses. But that's also part of our evaluation, at least at this point, until that is determined as to how or what we are willing to allow in regards to a permanent garage or a portable storage shed. You know, currently, again, we want to maintain, I don't want people to be driving through and just see garages, you know. I want people to come through and see homes and see an up north woods kind of feel. That's the intent if you've taken a close look at the design with leaving as much native vegetation as possible. And if everybody decides to plop a garage out front, you know, our concern is that it would really kind of impact what we want the feeling of the park to be.
Your feeling is not to have garages.
Currently, our position is not to have garages.
And I would almost say that I think you would have to come back and amend the CUP if you wanted to do that, just for the fact that that's not shown in the site layouts right now. That is what had to happen with the park in Oakland. They had to amend their CUP to allow each site to have, I think they have like a 24 by 24 is their size. They had to come in and ask for that, to have those garages.
But that makes a difference between a storage shed sitting out beside the house and a garage, because a storage shed can only be so big, and if you have your own lawn to mow and you have boat and fishing equipment and, all this kind of stuff, all of a sudden it's just leaning up against the house because you don't have room in the storage shed. Where I go by the one in Overland Township, they have their garage doors open. I see tools, I see gardening tools, I see the lawnmower, I see the ATVs, I see all that, and then they pull the garage door down. But it keeps their lawn and their home looking a lot nicer than having a storage shed with stuff leaning up against it.
I agree. You know, we will allow storage sheds to a certain size for people to keep their lawnmower, keep their tools, keep stuff, because as I said earlier, part of our guidelines for living is no open air storage. I've been through many places and I'm like, I just don't want to see your junk. So if I take a certain level of pride in my ownership, and I want to be able to have rules where I can stop by and say, hey, Mr. Peterson, you can't have all this stuff leaned up against your shed. You need to, if you got too much stuff, get the biggest possible shed that our guidelines allow, or fortunate for you, I happen to know someone who's got a storage facility right next door. So you can store your boat over there. If you have too much stuff, you can rent a unit over there and you can have additional storage. But, you know, that's our intention is for whether people like it or not. You know, if you're a messy person, that's fine. Keep your mess inside your house. Outside, we want everyone to be able to have a lot of pride of ownership and for our park to look a certain way when people are driving through. So even if you're a messy person, with me enforcing those rules, on the outside, it'll look like you're really well kept.
Question for Jason. If they did allow garages, how would they be taxed?
I'd have to ask the assessor that.
Because I know like in campgrounds, the sheds are not taxed.
Yeah, they're not taxed just because they have no, it's hard to chase a $500 item around and give them a $2 tax bill for it. You know, I think it's a little different when you have a $10,000 garage sitting on each site, that the assessor's gonna make sure that that stuff is being taxed accordingly. I just don't know if it would be personal property or real property. I'm assuming real property, but.
Probably an improvement, you know?
Yeah.
So it would probably be charged to the owner of the facility, I guess.
But we'd have to ask the assessor for sure on that one.
And this is gonna come up in the process, I might as well ask it now and get to it on that when you raise the amended or revision to the CUP request, what you've submitted today was, of course, prior to you realizing that you were not gonna use sanitary district for wastewater, right? Well, you know, you're talking well over 27,000 gallons a day design flow. It's gonna be a WPDS permit because it's way more than 12,000 gallons total. And it isn't individual systems, it's the total generated on the site with the project. That's how the state regulates that.
Right.
So it looks to me like you're gonna have to redesign your layout, provide for the areas for those wastewater treatment systems. The soils you have out there are in the southwest corner, pretty good, sandy, Great Kamanaga complex. But the rest of it is either Parida or Carlsberg, clay lens underneath, not very far to water table, possibly mountains at best, you know. But I'm of the opinion, and I'm throwing this out, that we're not really ready to consider this yet, because we really don't know what it's gonna look like after that many revisions. So, you know, in other words, I don't think that we can give you a conditional use permit today, not knowing what it's gonna really be. how many sites you're gonna have, or whether your density will be all at 3 per acre rather than having to compress it. You know, this is stuff that's gonna have to be revisited, I think, on your part.
Well, I understand on our part that we're gonna have to revisit those issues with the engineer. You know, we haven't even done soil testing or anything yet, and clearly the permit's gonna have to go through the DSPS and go through the process. As far as us having to do that, that's already predetermined that we have to do that.
Right,
but-
what I'm getting at is, for CUP, you know, first of all, the one thing that you didn't talk about is the fact that within our ordinance, it does say that why we have CUPs is that not every activity is suitable on every site. That's why we go through the process. I think your plan is good, you know, I'm not disagreeing with it. But I don't think the plan you submitted is what it's gonna look like when you're done. And probably a substantial amount of difference. So I'm thinking, you know, that we may need to have you bring back what you're actually gonna do before I'm not talking about full permits or anything, but where are the septics gonna go? Arguably, the best soil you have for septics are on the western side. Your drain fields may serve as an additional buffer from the Gandy, frankly, you know. They can be mixed in prairie plantings or something, you gotta be off the lot line anyway. You know, but the point of it is I think this is gonna look a lot different when you get done addressing the sort of monkey wrench you got thrown without anticipating, that you aren't connecting to the sanitary district. See where I'm going with that?
Well, I see where you're going, but I do disagree, because if I'm hearing you say you should go get all your engineering done, so we know how big, you know, you speak as if you're an expert on the soil, that's fine, but then tell me, you know,
I'm gonna tell you that I was in zoning for 30 years. I sat on state level advisory committees to determine what the DSPS permit code is. I was a soil tester, I've designed systems myself approaching 10,000 gallons a day. This is 3 times bigger than that. I know how much room it's gonna take up, but we don't know what it's gonna be yet. You know, you might be talking mounds, you're not, I don't know that, you might use up quite a few acres in the southwest corner just to contain all your wastewater where you have the best soil. But you need to know that yourself to figure out how you're gonna redesign and whether you're gonna wind up with 93 or maybe down to 60 or something.
maybe.
To make it happen. So what I'm getting at today, we're allowed under the Act 67 to know what we're approving. And so I'm not saying deny you today necessarily. I'm saying perhaps with some discussion by the committee, postponing this until you at least have some site and soil work done and figure out how you're gonna redesign to accommodate that. You see where I'm getting at?
I do. Obviously, that's work that has to be done. I mean, if you were to pass, if you were to give me the permit, then clearly that work has to be done. And that may or may not, depending on however it lays out, that may require that I'm not able to get 93 units. It may mean I'm only able to get 80 units. I'm not gonna go over 93 units, you know.
Well, and I'm not telling you, I'm not making a motion to deny because this happened to you, okay?
Yeah.
I'm contemplating telling you, in my opinion at least, that this is premature to try to make a decision on this today. I'm not making it out of motion yet, but I want to discuss it with you about, you know, how you feel about that a little bit.
My feeling is clearly we feel comfortable to spend the money if we have the permit. You know, if we're denied the permit and saying, go design your septic systems, then come back and request the permit, there's still nothing to say that you may not deny that after that fact. So that's, you know, for us to go spend the money, so.
I get that, but if you have done that, and I'm not saying right to the point of having permits, but at least an evaluation of what you need to do. I'm gonna put devil's advocate you and say, if you'd have known that going in, you would have done that before you decided to try it. Right?
Well, we would have at least in our design, dedicated some space. Now,
You're a realtor, you know, you're not gonna buy a lot without a soil test.
Sometimes, yeah.
So it's the same thing on a giant scale, admittedly. You know, so I think we maybe need to proceed with the public hearing, but I wanted to bring that up. I think it's a really big issue, at least as far as in my mind.
Yeah, I mean, so we're prepared at this point, obviously, to build the sanitary hookup. You know, we have to be able to work with the engineer and say, okay, I mean, it's not just straight. I mean, it's, when you go into bedroom count and stuff, right? Because we may have to predetermine how many bedrooms we need to have, how many 2 bedrooms we need to have, and how many 3 bedrooms we can have. And and that's the max. Because if we were to do 3 across the whole site, then clearly that would be way more demand on a system. So
last time I checked, the manufactured home design criteria was 300 gallons a site peak, 200 gallons average, regardless of whether they were 2-bedroom, 3-bedroom. But, you know, I'm not saying that they don't allow for that, but there's some very specific.
I didn't get the time to go that deep into what that code was for that, but clearly, you know, again, that's not for me to know the rules. It's our engineer, you know, hey, you know, design it, what we can, you know, show me what we can do, and let's find out where the thresholds are.
What I'm saying is, I think we need to know what you're gonna do to do it.
Okay.
I thought, that's enough.
Move on.
Has there been,
Move on.
has
Yeah,
there been
move on.
precedence for denying a conditional use permit until the wastewater treatment system has been designed?
It's not complete without knowing what's gonna happen to the wastewater. An incomplete application.
Okay.
Any other questions for the applicant?
You talk about conditions then?
Well, yeah, that we won't know what the conditions would be because we don't know what's gonna happen yet. That's my plan.
There's no other questions. Thank you, and we'll continue on for the general public hearing. I'll open it for public hearing comments. I've got a list of people. I can start through the list, or?
However you want.
All right. We got, Kim Davis. I assume ours are, they're remote? Okay. Kim Davis, are you on?
I am. Can you hear me?
Go ahead. You got 3 minutes.
All right. So Kim Davis at 7599 Laverne Road. Laverne Road is a hidden gem. It's home to 4 residential properties, which is something those residential properties value in their home's location. Most Siren citizens don't even know where Laverne Road is located, or at least didn't until Mr. Radish and Mr. Hirsch decided to demolish several acres of Siren's beauty and natural resources. First, it was a campground, which increased unwanted tourism, putting a strain on our town and county services without the benefit of property taxes. Now it's a manufactured home community, which will give us the property taxes, but without on-site management, will be sure to eventually add drug, violence, and poverty. Like I said, there are currently 4 residences on Laverne Road, a total of maybe 7 cars with a mail carrier who drive on it every day. It was graded just over a month ago and is currently in terrible condition. Several divots and bumps, and that's with extremely minimal travelers. Yes, it's spring thaw, but as someone who lives on Laverne Road, I can tell you this is a year-round issue. The plans for the manufactured community use the driveway of a private, already established personal family residence as the only entrance to the manufactured community. Their mailbox is at the end of their driveway. Their small children play, walk, ride bikes on their driveway. Their small dog enjoys exploring along the driveway. Adding over 100 travelers along their driveway extremely diminishes their quality of life and all of their privacy, and it clearly has a detrimental effect on the neighboring properties. This driveway, in addition to Laverne Road, is in terrible condition and unsuitable for any increased traffic. There needs to be a refocus on building something the community actually needs, not the quickest way to get rich. Clear Lakes Estate and Long Lake Mobile Home Parks in Siren have vacancy and lake views. Voyager Village has manufactured home lots available with mature trees and lake views. The need for a manufactured home community on Laverne Road is unnecessary. By removing 90% of the wooded area, they have only to offer a view of the Gandy Dancer and a brand new storage facility. Please listen to the community, your constituents, and the Siren Town Board and deny this cup. If you have to approve it, we need conditions in place for an alternate entrance and a severe upgrade to Laverne Road, which I need to ask, who is going to pay for that? Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Patrick Hansen. Are you on, Patrick?
Can you hear me?
Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. My name is Patrick Hansen, 11465 North Shore Drive. That is where I own property and reside seasonally, and it's where my wife and I plan to retire. I'll start by saying thank you to the full committee for your service, and welcome especially to Supervisors Anderson and Mullen, who are newly joining this committee. Thank you for your service. So I appreciate that this CUP is proposing full-time housing as opposed to the prior proposals. Burnett County does need quality, affordable housing, as the applicant has suggested. And that is consistent, that piece of this is consistent with the needs of the community and the comprehensive plans for the community. I'm disappointed, however, that the applicant has chosen not to work with the town of Siren on this project. They've chosen a combative approach as opposed to a collaborative approach. And you see that explicitly in the letter from the town of Siren. I think the result, the unfortunate outcome of that and the result of that approach is that this project cannot proceed as proposed. Supervisor Conroy made reference to this in some of the earlier discussion. I don't see how this project could possibly contain 93 manufactured home units if it is not connected to the wastewater treatment plant that is part of the village of Siren, and doing that via the sanitary district under the town of Siren. So being denied access to that system is a major shift in thinking in this project and certainly impacts the density and overall plan. In my letter, I suggested 3 conditions if the committee were to proceed with this project, and the applicant did me the favor of kind of going through those in detail, so I can spare you some of that. I'll just say that it is the purpose, a major purpose of this committee is to translate representations from the developer and from the applicant into conditions that protect the public interest. In addition to translating your expertise and knowledge in this area and your view of projects like this into conditions that protect the public interest. And so I think it should be no offense or no perceived attack on the applicant to say that we should not take representations, mere statements of what is intended for the property at their face value alone in the process, but actually translate those representations into conditions and have that apply to the permit as it is approved or if it is approved. I'll also say that I think the letter from the town of Siren, I can't speak for the town of Siren, hopefully someone might do that, but they might not have anticipated the project proceeding, and so they may not have yet chosen to address the issue of the road, which Kim Davis did mention. And I think that that's a major consideration going forward, is how will that road be improved and maintained. So again, thank you for your service and time today.
Thank you. Next, we have Karen Rivers. Are you on, Karen?
I am.
Go ahead.
Well, I thank you very much for letting me speak. I live at 7610 Laverne Road, directly across from the proposed new trailer park. And I'm calling it a trailer park because I'm kind of confused. A manufactured home is different than a trailer. I'm not clear on that. So what will that look like? And are we looking at double wides? Is that what a manufactured home is? Anyway, I'm concerned. 93 units would generate 93 vehicles. And if each of these proposed units, families, have 2 vehicles, that's double the amount of vehicles that will be using Laverne Road. The amount of traffic that will generate is incredible on this little road that is in questionable condition. So there is no question that something will need to be done with Laverne Road should this trailer park be approved. I'm concerned specifically about the noise, the dust, the fuel emissions, and just overall safety on that road. It's not just the access from the trailer park, but it's the access at the end of the road, which is joined by the access road from Four Winds, as well as access from the furniture and flooring, or what used to be furniture and flooring place. Granted, not a lot of traffic from that particular spot. And then there's also access off of Highway 35. It's a big concern, safety-wise. The other concern I had was that the proposed retaining pond, whether that, how safe that would be, and whether there would be stagnant water involved. And I understand that there are some safeguards in place for that, but I sure would want you to look at that as another problem. Overall, I'm just questioning whether Laverne Road is an appropriate place for a trailer park.
Thank you.
That's it. Mm-hmm.
Next, Wayne Weberg, Town of Siren.
Hi, my name's Wayne Weberg. I live at 7787 Elbow Lake Road in Siren. I'm a supervisor for the Town of Siren. Just wanted to let the board know, the committee know, we did pass an ordinance on manufactured/mobile homes and manufactured/mobile home parks. Ordinance number 4-5-22. We did not pass this to prohibit this park or cut it down in size or anything like that. What we did was to put expectations in writing for the township, for the park owners and residents, for pertaining to reporting of movement of homes, perimeter screening, accessory structures, and setbacks of homes to lot. Not in any way. We looked at Andy's site, his lots setbacks and everything else, and nothing that we see that we put into this ordinance would be further restrictive than what he has right now. We just did it for future reference, so we have, like I say, accessory structures and movement, so we know to tell the assessor tax or untaxed. We've had in the past in the Long Lake Trailer Court, people have moved out of their trailer homes, and we get the personal property tax come in for that person. We go down to find them. Oh, they moved last year. They're no longer here. And we have no idea to tell the assessor, take them off the personal property tax roll. So that's why we want to have notification of movement for that reason. Thank you.
Anyway. Next, we have Rachel Thomas.
Dear Burnett County Board members, my name is Rachel Thomas, and I will be closing on the Davis home at the end of May, 7599 Laverne Road. I was born and raised in Frederick, Wisconsin, and just returned home after finishing my doctoral degree. My parents are Scott and Elaine Thomas, who are local to the area also. My dad has owned Southside Auto here in Siren for many years. When I toured the Davis home, I fell in love instantly. Then I was informed of the manufactured home park and how this would directly border two of the sides of this property. My heart immediately sank. The home that I thought was absolutely perfect for myself and future family was no longer what I had hoped for. I am continuing to go through with buying the Davis home out of hope that the plans this board here today stops their plans here and now. Further, on a third side of the property, there has already been approval of an 8-acre mini storage facility by Mr. Radish and Mr. Hirsch. I think that no one is greatly opposed to the mini storage area, and I know that this is already passed anyways. So please, allow them to make their money on that. Don't allow them to create a metropolitan area here in an otherwise country location. I will be buying 10 acres with my home, and there are other neighbors there who have 50 acres, etc. But what good does acreage do if you have 93 families surrounding you? None. Please think of the families in this direct area. Due to closing on my home at the end of the month, I have been in contact with the tax assessor. I told him about the manufactured home park plan that was in place, and two things that he had said in our conversation really stuck out. One, wow, I can't believe you weren't able to negotiate the price down further when buying due to the plans of this park. Two, contact me if, when they break ground on this project, because the home value will significantly decrease and your taxes will then be lowered considerably. Further, the town of Siren has approximately 780 people currently. If there are 93 houses added with an average of 3 people per home, that is 279 people. If 279 new people move to the town of Siren, that is a 35.7% increase in its population. How will the town manage this? We will need substantially more people in emergency services such as fire and police departments. Can our town really grow by over 35% in all aspects? And how will this be paid for? Taxpayer dollars? As I said, I am a doctor of physical therapy. The human body is my expertise, not government ordinances. However, I just learned while Mr. Hirsch was talking that 8.11 LU11C is about noise and detrimental effects to people surrounding the area. Well, there will be detrimental effects. As I spoke to the tax assessor, he said it straight to me, there will be detrimental effects to your home's value, along with all the other home values in the area. And like someone mentioned previously, their idea was approved by all the neighbors, the lady who is sitting here. This idea is not approved by any of the neighbors. This low-income housing plan will negatively impact all the surrounding areas, and I believe the whole town.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, Jerry Krause. Krause.
Good morning. Jerry Krause, 6728 Link Road in Danbury. I'd like to start out by saying that I'm in favor of well-designed, affordable housing communities. I think they are a good option for year-round living here in Burnett County. If the conditional use permit is recommended for approval, a couple of things come to mind. One that Mr. Conroy mentioned, the question of the 6 units per developable acre. I'm not sure how this fits with the site plan that currently exists that was submitted. There's apparently marshy points somewhere, wetland points in this site. I don't know where they are. It's not indicated, I don't believe, on the site plan. Can't imagine putting a unit on top of one of those, even if it's not a wetland per se. There's no real calculation submitted with the plan as it is about how many per developable acre, because certainly roadways and septic and setback all come into play. None of that is delineated. It seems, as Mr. Conroy suggested, premature for the committee to actually consider this application, which appears at this point, especially with the town of Siren's concern with regard to the septic systems, to be premature and incomplete. Also, the roadway that others have already spoken to, I just drove down it this morning. Some of you have done it maybe as well, but it's potholed, it's washboard. It will rattle loose your dental feelings if you travel about 15 miles an hour. The 93 home sites, it's about the size of Danbury. Danbury's got 105 housing units in it. A single gravel street for a community of that size, I think, is really not a very good idea. Lastly, I think, as Mr. Hansen mentioned, rules that the applicant suggests, I think, are very good, but rules are not conditions on an application. If Mr. Hirsch would change his mind, or alternatively, if he sells the property, guidelines for living are not the same as a conditional use requirement with regard to noise, with regard to buildings, and certainly with 2+ parking spaces per unit, you can do the math yourself about how many vehicles, how much vehicle count would come down this roadway, which now is not very well serving the few number of people who live there. Thank you very much for your consideration.
Thank you, Jerry. I have no other people listed on the list. Do you have any? There are no other public comments.
We may just speak, even if we haven't signed up.
Here, come ahead. Oh,
Just short and sweet. I get,
Your name.
please state your
Scott
name.
Thomas, a daughter or father of Rachel Thomas. I get what he's saying as far as he keeps talking about the natural rural living of Siren, you know, great thing. I've lived there all my life, went to Siren High School. It is a great area. This proposal of 20 foot back from the Gandy dancer, 20 foot is approximately from here to that wall. You got a tree or two in between, that's the only buffer you got. It's like putting lipstick on a pig if you know, excuse my area here. But to try to make it rural living, you're moving, like the other gentleman said, the town of Danbury into a 30-acre lot. And if we're gonna go with nice look as intended, you know, I think they all would have to be on a slab, not on a stand, if we're gonna make it look good. You know, and I've known other people that have ran trailer parks and that, it's not as easily said, you know, like, okay, Mrs. Peterson, you're leaving your stuff outside, or Mr. Peterson. You can go and tell them 3-4 times. What are you gonna do? You gonna take their home away instantly and move on with it? It would take a long course of time.
Thank you. If no other public comments, I'll close. Go ahead.
Diane Lund, 6379 Star Road, and I am a Siren Township Supervisor. Andy has done just an extensive job on looking into things. He knows all of the rules, he knows the regulations, but as a teacher, I see an omission in there, and that's about the on-site management. That bothers me. I like the guidelines that he said. I like the regulations, because teachers always like rules and being in a box. But I don't know who's going to take care of that. And he said that they could call him, but that would get old, I think. I think there needs to be something a little bit more organized. So I would like you to take that into consideration. And Andy, I would like him to take that into consideration in thinking about on-site management.
Thank you. Anyone else? If not, I'll close the public hearing at this time.
I'd like to respond.
Sure.
Thank you.
So Kim Davis made a few comments. Clearly her house is pending. You know, she doesn't have to worry about her kids or her dog on the driveway. And she said it's a private driveway. It's not a private driveway. It's an easement across my property. Once it crosses off my property onto her property, then it is a private driveway. You know, regarding some of Patrick Hansen's comments, I am not combative with the town of Siren. I think even the comments that Wayne Weinberg and Diane Lund stated, in no way, I don't believe I have ever conducted myself in a combative way with them. Have I specifically gone to talk to them about this project? No, simply because conditional use permits authority has been granted to the county and not the township. Although, like someone like Scott, they know where I live. They have my phone number. Scott took it upon himself to call me, and I answered his questions. They're free to call me. In fact, I was just on a township meeting call with them on the 14th, where we were discussing a separate issue, and this topic never came up. So in no way am I combative with them. In fact, before we ever even bought the 31 acres, I actually went to a meeting, and I said, hey, I'm looking at this 31 acres. Here's what I'm thinking about doing with it. But I do not, because you guys were in a moratorium on campgrounds at the time, I said, I would only want to make an offer in good faith. So before I can do that, I'm discussing it with you to see if this would be something that you would be favorable of. And at the time, they said yes. In fact, Diane's late husband even drove out to the property, looked at it, came back to the next meeting and said, Andy, I went and looked at it. That looks like an ideal spot for a campground. Then I proceeded in good faith to make an offer and purchase the property. Now, water under the bridge, unfortunately, there was a township meeting and the decision was made against us. And like I said before, we accepted that measure. But I just want you guys to know, no way do I view our relationship as combative. I understand Karen Rivers' concerns. In our park, we will have a posted 15-mile-per-hour speed limit. We have some of the same concerns of her as dust and noise and stuff. That's why we also will have a stated quiet time. I was unaware of the new ordinance by the township. You know, as long as it isn't exceeding the county or state code, we're perfectly fine with complying with that. Couple of Rachel Thomas's comments. Number one, her property does not border the mini storage property. The mini storage property and my 31 acres border each other, and she has the easement to drive across my property to access her property. The tax assessor's statements, I would advise him to probably proceed with extreme caution, being that in the real estate industry, there's 13 different categories of housing discrimination in the state. So he may have been speaking a bit out of turn there, being that I've had no conversations with him. And if you want to degrade people that live in a, quote, trailer park, when I'm not talking about low-income housing or Section 8, I'm simply talking about affordable housing. Diane's concern of on-site management, we have the same concerns, but one of the reasons why, you know, and I said, yes, I live in town, but we have purchased and have plans for the furniture and flooring building. We also have the mini storage and outdoor storage facility that has been approved by the committee, and the now this proposal for the 93-unit manufactured home park. Part of our discussions with my partner all along was, if we do this, how do we effectively manage it? And part of the reason why we bought 3 different entities that tend to cross-pollinate each other in usage is also that if any business is big enough, now you can afford to have management. I don't know if any of you have your own business, but the goal is eventually to grow the business so that I can replace myself to perform some of my duties. And that is our intention with these projects, is at a certain point to have someone in charge specifically to manage the 3 entities that happen to be back to back to back. So it's definitely on our purview is how do we manage. I'm just simply saying that we are not out-of-town developers. I live in Siren. I live 3 miles away. You know, I'm not trying to be some shady developer like, who owns this thing? You know, I'm like, my tenants will know me. They'll know my name. They'll be free to call me whenever they want. And at a certain point at establishment, clearly we will invoke additional management. So thank you. I appreciate everyone's comments. Clearly we want, like I said at the very, very beginning, we want this to be something that is supported by the community, that understands the value that we're bringing.
Before you sit down, I got a question. I don't know who was it, was Karen Rivers, about the vehicles per unit. Did you say before how many would be permitted for each individual unit?
Well, the code states that we must have parking on site for 1.25 vehicles per unit. I don't want vehicles parking out on the main drive, so we're going to be providing enough parking on their actual space for 2+ vehicles. We've never even had a discussion of, are we going to limit vehicles? I mean, we've talked about, you know, no vehicles up on blocks being worked on and stuff like that. You know, that's not what we want to live. But, you know, if somebody has 3 working license permit, you know, vehicles, then they'll probably have the ability to park on their property and not out on the main road.
I just want to make it, you know, so people was clear on, you know, what it would be.
Yeah.
Other question I have, maybe this is going way out of bounds, but is there any possibility of talking with the town of Siren for being on the sewer district?
Well, initially, the initial talks with the township and with their representative Teresa with MSA, who we're actually also under contract with MSA as clients of theirs. The initial concept all the way back to the beginning, when we was discussing with the township of doing a RV park there, all along was for it to be connected to the sewer system. And when this came out of the blue, that, it's their purview to elect to do this, and we'll just proceed accordingly. But this was a little out of left field. I took it upon myself to call Teresa, who represents both the township and the village for both the sewer and their sanitary district. And I said, hey, Teresa, did the township happen to consult you on this? And she said, no. And I said, well, here's what they've provided in their letter, that they're not going to allow me to hook up to the sanitary district. And I won't quote her, but I will say that she was beyond disappointed, being that there's probably no one more intimately involved with the system, the operation, what it needs to run efficiently, so forth and so on. So unfortunately, that's their decision. That's fine. We'll move on with it, but it did come a bit out of left field.
Did they say why?
No, I only saw that letter as a result of it being submitted to the zoning administrator, which was then forwarded to me. Other than that, I have not had any specific communication with them, and that was only submitted last Thursday. So I'm sure at some point we would probably have a conversation.
Hey, would you like to comment?
I can comment on that. When Andy first came to us and started talking about his campground, and we thought that would be a nice area, that was for a 50-unit campground. We did the math on 50 units and 30 acres, it looked pretty good. We looked at hooking up to the sanitary, and we talked to the village and the Teresa, and looked good. However, hooking 93 units that are manufactured homes up increases the flow. Now, the problem with the village of Siren and our system is not the amount of space in the pond. There's plenty of room in the pond. The problem is when the pipe comes down meets up with the village, it goes into a pump and goes through a forced main, which is 4 inches, runs down 4th Street, just about to the school from the park. And to run that much more flow through would require a bigger pump and a bigger main. They'd have to go to a 6-inch main. So there would be an additional charge to rebuild everything to get that much flow to go through. There is an option to bypass that and dump it directly and bypass that pump. That is an option too. However, we thought it is not fair to the sanitary district to add another parcel on. We have figured on the county's flow into the equation, but to add 93 more units in and have to rebuild or run that line and have everybody else on the sanitary district pay for that. So we voted not to incorporate it into the sanitary district.
I just wanted to know if there was ever a possibility of working together.
If there would be a possibility, if we could figure out how to get that paid for without putting it on the people in the sanitary district.
Okay. Thank you.
So first off, we never indicated number of sites on our original plan of campground. In fact, MSA, the original plan that was submitted, MSA drew those plans. Okay, Teresa and her team drew the plans. If you've also seen the letter from MSA in regards to the village of Siren and the township of Siren regarding her specific answer to the zoning administrator regarding the capacity for wastewater, she makes no mention of any upgrades. Maybe that's the case. I don't know. But I do know that when I want to talk about the specific sewer issues, I go to the most informed person I know, and that's Teresa with MSA, being that her engineering firm for, I think, close to 20 years has basically been managing that for them. But again, that's their choice, and that's fine. You know, unfortunately, we were only notified on the 28th. And, you know, we really haven't, other than directing our engineers of the findings, Teresa with MSA being one of them, that we need to proceed accordingly to now go through the DSPS and figure out you know, how we can manage the wastewater. But, you know, that is what it is. Moving on. Thank you.
I will say, in the past, on any CUP, Jason's always wanted comments from the town. We wish the town would make more comments for us as a community. And I realize that our meeting is usually before most of the townships have their, you know, like this month, most of the townships. But it's always been the policy for the applicants talk to the town too. Would you like to take a little recess?
Yeah, that would be a good idea.
We'll come back at 11:15.
So much for my 10:30.
I know, I was like, I'm afraid I'll.
Are you doing any of the webinars? I don't know if Jason had.
start at the bottom. Now, well, what's available at the bottom? There isn't any great little residential apartments.
Yeah, I think so.
Ready? When they're ready to find their own place, or when they don't. Now the board of real estate, I think it's very, or something that, you have that's private, or that's unwanted.
Got the weather just too wild and lame. So neat, yeah.
Too mushy and wet.
Then you go across the street where everybody's got a shed.
We'll reconvene. Did he have any questions?
Can I just make one more comment?
Sure, go ahead.
So, as you guys go through your deliberation, discussion, maybe you have some more questions, that's fine. And I know we kind of had some going back and forth there, but, my understanding of a conditional use permit is to get the approval of the concept. Clearly there's a lot of details to work out, that's why after it's approved, we still have to hire engineers and there's a whole lot of work to be involved. So your approval really allows me to go to the next step, which is, get into the details, get into the deeper water, knowing that we're making a good investment of our money at that point, being that the concept, of what I've submitted has been approved. So that's what I'm just asking for you guys to consider during your deliberation, that you're really evaluating the concept that I've brought before you today, so.
I'm going to make a brief response to that.
Okay.
In my experience, and Jason's, was a lot fewer years of doing this than me, but we wouldn't take your application if the concept wasn't sound. We would tell you, there's no reason to apply for this, you have no chance. So you apply for something that we can provide. But as far as when it comes to the level of us approving it, I don't know too many land use committees that just give you a carte blanche and say, sure, we know you're gonna cover all those issues that we haven't even discussed yet. So, there's
I'm not exactly following.
well, it's that we don't, like, you have a design, but that design is gonna have to be modified to use up a lot of space for drain fields and septic systems. So your design's gonna change, so we're not approving a design that we're giving you, whatever design you come up with is okay if we approve it for you today. That's what I'm trying to say. That's what we have to talk about.
I'm not asking for you to approve whatever I come up with. I've explained all of the different parameters staying within the code and staying within your guys' staff report. And my viewpoint is, as long as I don't exceed any of those, if I wanted to exceed something of those, if I came back and said, my engineer now came up with 95 units, I'm assuming that I would have to come back before the committee. But if the final design actually has 80, I don't see why I should have to invest all the money in that. In fact, on my agenda is, I'm like, we just were notified this on the 28th as far as the sanitary district, which is fine, is their prerogative, but I'm still before here and breaking ground, going to go back to Teresa, gonna go back to the township and say, can we make sure all the Ts are crossed and the Is are dotted, because we went through the process of submitting it this way, and if that still is doable, great, we'll go that way, but if not, we'll still comply with the codes and the state statutes.
I wish you would have found out about it sooner, and I wish you would have said, I need to postpone this for a month while I look at this. That would have been really easy, but that's not where we're at.
I came and talked to Jason about it. I said, do I need to do anything formal if I'm gonna change the proposal from the sanitary district to, having to do on-site wastewater treatment? And he said, no. I said, okay.
I can tell you, we have postponed and asked for additional information from other conditional use permits that were incomplete. So, just so you know.
I guess my answer is that I don't necessarily see this as incomplete. There's clearly more details that need to be flushed out through the course of the engineering.
There, I see it as incomplete, and I get to vote on it.
Okay.
Okay?
All right.
No more debate.
All right, thank you.
Okay. Anything else the committee wishes to discuss?
Well, I think, this, if we're gonna deliberate here, I'm concerned, as we've debated back and forth here, but I'm concerned that we have established a fairly high level of scrutiny for these sorts of things. Not that we do manufactured home parks all the time, but similar type of activities where we wanted to know that we had adequate septic systems, that we wanted to know where they were gonna be, how the layout was gonna be affected, all of those things. It affects a developable acre, because obviously the drain-filled areas get removed from developable acre consideration. And we don't know what they even are going to be yet. The mounds obviously take up a lot more room than in-ground systems do. I can tell you out there that the soils are variable, and that until somebody does some soil work, we don't know what kind of systems he would have if he does not be able to get into the sanitary district. Personal opinion, and nothing that I would use as a condition, is that I'm nervous about manufactured home parks on private sewage systems. I've seen failures inexplicably based on what goes into them, because you just don't know. It's a lot of volume. It's always better for such a wastewater flow to be into a public sewer. Okay, state always has preferred public sewers to private sewage systems, all else being equal. So when one is available for a high volume flow, I said, I can say that it's at least 27,000 gallons a day design flow. That's probably not as big as Herzl Camp, but it's right up there with Burnett County wastewater treatment systems. So, and Herzl Camp's only a 3 months a year operation. The rest of the time it's free. Anyway, that's neither here nor there. But I also am concerned on the Laverne Road issue. I think it's a legitimate issue. If this was a subdivision of 40 or 50 or 90 lots, each with a dwelling, the municipality, town of Siren, in accepting a plat, would have something to say about that and might accept road dedications and whatnot for that much traffic, and could require the roads to be constructed to town specs prior to accepting it. That's not unusual. This is not a subdivision, not a plat, but it does have a lot of traffic. I would want to contemplate requiring as a condition upgrading Laverne Road at the expense of the developer, so the taxpayers of the town of Siren would not have to pay for it, should we approve it. But I think myself, the appropriate measure here would be to a motion to postpone, to give them an opportunity to address these issues and offer conditions or redesign as requested by the committee, similarly to what we've done in the past on campgrounds, if we wanted to have more information before we proceeded. Not making that a motion yet, but that's my thought.
The reason I asked on Siren if there was a possibility for them to be included in this. The reason I asked the town of Siren if there was a possibility of them being included in the sanitary system.
Well, I agree. We don't have.
He did explain that they've got a problem with the pipe down on the fourth. Fourth will not handle that amount of sewage. No, sir. That's the reason I asked if there was a possibility.
I think he said there was a possibility, but it's mostly, I think, some of these issues are involved with the cost to the municipalities involved to do the upgrades required for the development to be successful or to be implemented. And that is a legitimate concern. There is exactions on developers sometimes to provide some of the infrastructure that their project requires. You know, this isn't a great deal, but Laverne Road is obviously not much of a road. We'll have a lot more traffic, no doubt about that. And again, we're going to need to know where the how many developable acres are we gonna have when we know where the drain fields are gonna be? A couple of, so as it stands right now, I think it's incomplete for us to consider.
That, what would the cost difference be in putting a whole new private system in regards to helping sanitary district upgrade their system?
I can give you an anecdote, but I can't tell you the cost. But when Minot built its school out on the county line between Douglas and Washburn, familiar with that, where that is, they put in a private sewage system there for a school, which is a really big one, right? Not as big as this, but right up there, we're about the same. It would have cost approximately twice as much to connect to the municipal sewer in Minot, involve crossing both Shell Creek and the Tetogatech River and going like 2 miles or more to the, twice as much sounds like a lot, but not when you consider all private sewage systems have a sort of a life expectancy. As we know from here at the courthouse, that we have to manage ours, and we're gonna connect to municipal when we get a chance, the expansion. So from a long-term investment point of view, could have argued that if you're gonna insist on building the school 2 miles from the sewage treatment plant, but you're gonna spend, I'm gonna make it up, $100,000 on this system, and you're gonna spend $200,000 to cross 2 rivers and pump back to town, maybe that would have made more sense, you know? I mean,
The way it sounded, just increasing a pipe or and a pump, and that's what it sounded like.
It's gonna, you know, and it's all gonna have to be sewered on the site, assuming, you know, if you do it, you may cluster, you may have multiple systems on a design like this with private sewage systems, so you might allocate that 27,000 gallons among 4 different systems. But from a WPDS permit to DNR and DSPS, it doesn't matter. Multiple systems are one great big one, same to them. It's not a escape loophole by having multiple systems. It's the load the project puts on the landscape at that location. So, and, you know, and that's some of the feasibility would involve what it's gonna, how much it's gonna cost him to do this.
In regards to just helping them fix up their system.
I mean, it might be worth finding out before you decide, this is how much I have to spend for wastewater treatment private, and it's gonna cost this much for me to contribute to upgrading the access to the public, and it's cheaper to do that.
That's what I meant.
Watch it out for your money a little bit, maybe. But those are things we don't know yet, and that's my concern about wanting to put this off for a while.
And another point to that is, with that not being identified, how much are you funneling that cost back to the residents, and then is it still affordable housing? That, because if you have to upgrade the road and you have to do the septic, whether private or on the municipal side, those costs, I don't believe at $200 a month are gonna put into your equation. Just my concern, I haven't seen your figures.
It seems to me that road should be replaced to begin with. I've been over it several times, it's nothing but sugar sand. I think that the town might have a responsibility there, as it is.
But it is a town road, which is a responsibility of the town.
I know that.
I know, like I said before, you're putting development in, and you're gonna be putting the road in. Most of the towns require it to be blacktop before they'll accept it.
That's my point about if it were a subdivision rather than a conditional use permit, town would be in a position to require that. They are not, because of in fact how this process works.
And another reason I don't feel like I could make a decision as it currently stands is if there are changes due to, you know, how it needs to be laid out, there would potentially be additional requirements for screening, you know, if there's more density or, you know, things shifted here or there. And I just don't feel like I have complete information, not knowing what it's gonna look like.
answer a question, Mr. Hirsch. In the past, on a campground, we have denied the CUP because of septic, because all they had was a little dot, this is where it's gonna be. They had no information on what was gonna be done. And we denied the CUP and it was upheld by the Board of Adjustment. Any other comments, questions? Jason, you got anything?
Nope.
Everyone looked at the, consider approval of the following items they want to be included in the motion. On page,
Was there a motion?
3 of 3.
No motion yet. The recommendations we have, and the applicant discussed some of them, was, that we have on here about connection to the municipal system, proper connection, permitted, things that are arguably off the table unless they resolve the conflict with the town over connection. And we don't know.
I think it's
It's two different worlds, really. Either we have a connection to the municipal treatment plant or we have private sewage. Don't know, but we don't know what either one of those would look like right now. So, I guess to move this along, I will make a motion to postpone this decision pending resolution of the issue of if there are private sewage systems, where will they be? And what kind are they? They're intertwined. But enough soil evaluation done to determine where that would happen. A proposal of how the layout configuration would look then. I'd like to see the applicant come up with a proposal to address the Laverne Road quality and amount of upgrade that is appropriate for it to serve the traffic that would be proposed. And resolve the issue as to whether there would or wouldn't be a private connection to the Gandhi by DNR. Got the application in, but to get some insight into whether they will or will not approve that. That's still in discussion as well. Those 4 items are what come to my mind. Anybody else want to add?
Add what the dimension of that, if there is an entrance to the Gandhi, the dimensions of what that can be, so it can't be wide, it has to be narrow enough to not allow ATV or golf, motorized traffic.
Yeah, perhaps it could be a narrow gate or an openable gate for winter perhaps, but yeah, some kind of plan to address that access, yes.
Yeah, because in the winter, the ATVs can use it.
And not that it would need to be staked per se, but I'd like to be able to know, visibly, once we have a new layout, if screening might be indicated in certain areas, just to have a better idea visually when I'm looking at it.
Flagged a boundary?
A little bit. I mean, I don't think it has to be extensive, or even a tour pointing to.
I'll add defining the boundary and flagging.
Difficult to see right now on the screen because we don't know how much excavation is gonna have to take place for the construction of the site.
It'll have to be a DNR permit on that.
Pardon me?
There'll have to be a DNR permit on that anyway, because it'll be over an acre.
There's no doubt, a lot more than an acre disturbed. There may need to be some, there's the stuff that's required anyway under the state, avoidance of wetlands and whatnot are already part of that.
Anything else? You got the motion down?
I do.
I spoke slowly.
Like me to?
Yes, please read it.
Right, his motion is to postpone pending resolution of private on-sewer water treatment system, where it'll be and what kind, soil evaluation, layout proposal, address Laverne Road for traffic, resolve, the entrance to the Gandy Dancer Trail and find boundaries and have staking.
Any conditions anybody else wants to add to that?
Motion, is there a second?
Seconded.
Second by Mr. Anderson. And this would be coming back next month, right?
I don't suspect it'd come back next month.
Well,
No,
when it comes back, it'll be still condition of the public hearing.
Yeah, we would renotice it.
we'll have to renotice it, and we'll try to make, understand, we need those things to be addressed. And so Jason reviews the revisions. If they're not there yet, then we're not gonna put it on the agenda.
Yep.
So we're kind of leaving it open-ended. What we would do if we don't get a response in a reasonable time, we'd put it on the agenda to discuss a dismissal or something, but I hope we don't need to do that.
Roll call vote.
Was there a second?
Yep.
Yeah.
Chuck,
Yep.
you're still-
Patterson,
Yes.
Ms. Mullen,
Yes.
Mr. Peden,
Yes.
Mr. Blomberg,
Yes.
Mr. Anderson,
Yes.
Mr. Conroy,
Yes.
Mr. Dickey, yes. Conditional use permit CUP 22-06 has been tabled, on that table. Postponed.
Postpone, we don't want to table it.
Thank you very much. Next on the agenda, approval to refill a zoning and health specialist position due to the resignation of Kendra Leach.
This already was approved at admin committee last month. It's already been posted and all that stuff, so, kind of an informal, or formality, I should say, for us to go through this process, so.
You're that rough on it, but they just don't laugh.
Pretty much, yep. Well, this is, you guys deal with this for a couple hours, we deal with this 8 hours a day, so. Yep.
Okay,
So, do you want a motion?
Yes, we need a motion, please.
motion by Mr. Blomberg,
To approve repealing that, zoning and health specialist position.
second by Ms. Mullen. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
Roll call, figure.
I'm
Just kidding.
How many do roll calls that have like a CUP or zoning change or anything like that? Land Use Services, Zoning Property Information Division
All
report.
right, the reports are in there. Something, what page they are, but near the end of the packet probably. Corner work is being done, we don't have any sheets yet. We got staff reports in there from Tia and Sonia, showing what they've been working on for the last month. We have permit statistics, or no, budget, sorry, report is in there next. Everything's fine for the year. Our revenue, you'll see, is a little bit down compared to last year, but last year was exceptionally high. Permits are still going.
And weather pressing activity.
Yep. Yeah, it's been a horrible spring, so that's slowing things down a little bit, but I mean, we're still getting lots of permits in, so. Still seems like lumber prices and interest rates haven't impacted us too much yet, at least what we're seeing at this point. Website statistics are in there. You'll see, again, we're about that 300 users per day using the GIS website, about 100 per day on the weekend. This time I put in there what cities are using the website. And the zoning report is in there showing permit numbers so far year to date.
Quite a few for new dwellings, isn't it?
Yes, it is. Yes, for this time point in the year, yep.
Short-term rentals. What percentage do you think we have?
10%. 27's probably 10% of them.
We're gaining on them, it's more than.
We are, we kind of did a little bit on them this spring. We're going through a list of them and sending some letters, so that's probably why that number's up a little higher.
The town of Siren is reworking their short-term rental agreements because they're finding what they had was mainly for the motels. They're finding all these other things that are now popping up, including bed and breakfast and buildings that were housing businesses have now converted at least part of their business to a short-term rental thing. So they're really pursuing it, and the Tourism Council now has a committee investigating. So they will probably come and talk to you on what kind of help they can give you.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, it's a popular activity, Airbnb. I mean, we had the one camper here, the glamping, thing that people are doing too. So, yeah, it's
That one
popular.
is kind of like that harvest host business that's going around the country where farmers or other people set up for a handful of sites. People can come visit their future beef or pig or whatever, and corn and wine.
They stand at the fence and say, "That's mine."
Exactly, but it's another little way to get a little shot of, supplemental income, and, they were willing to go through the hoops to do this instead of not do it anymore, so it's okay. But I haven't, Jason and I have been working some on ag amendments too, and you gotta ask them is, when we talked at ag, is allowing something like that within the A district okay, or does that violate the farmland preservation stuff?
My initial thought would be it violate farmland preservation, but I guess we'll find out.
I know, and then in Buffalo County, when they have a lot of different ag districts doing this, it made me wonder, that's where we stole that from.
Also for the new members, Jason, CUPs go with the land.
Yep, permits, CUPs run with the property. CUP is not issued to a person, just to a parcel.
And too, I talked to Aaron about this, but not to you. If you want to study up on Act 67 and what it actually says, the Center for Land Use Education at Point got some documents that are useful. And I can forward you a letter from the Ledge Council on how they interpreted after we came up in campground discussions. But I can send that to everybody if you wanted to see it again, just for reminding, because it isn't quite as absolute as it's been made to sound.
Are the new members planning on going to the college workshop? Are the officials?
On the 18th? Yeah.
Wonderful.
Chuck and I signed up for it too.
Yeah, and I did too, and it's really valuable.
How can I sign up also?
Yeah, it's good for everyone. For those of us who've been around a while, it's a good refresher.
Lots of ability to discuss things on the coffee breaks. So we really learn things.
Future agenda items.
I have one application, I can't remember what it's about, but I do have one for next month, so for sure there will be a meeting.
Sometime in the not too distant future, we'll bring some revised ag amendments.
Yes, one of these years, right? One of these years, right?
One of these years, yes.
Yep.
Yes, we've been talking about them and Larry's helped us find a few little hidden defects you didn't even know we had. Working on some of that.
And before we go, we need to sign.
Yep, just need to sign that rezone resolution for that one today.
The CUP for the three-year camper for third time. When do they have to have it hooked up?
I thought it was June 1st, I think.
We said we shortened the time it could be there, but didn't remove the requirement to hook up.
Correct.
It's been there for a long time without hooking up. Needs to.
You had a brochure out about, land use,
Yeah, there was some webinar training things that I
What
sent out.
is there anything there that you're really recommending that we, attend? Do you recall?
It's been a few weeks. No, I don't recall.
There were several.
No, I think there was 4 of them that I said would be appropriate if you wanted to attend.
Any of them, I looked through them too, but.
There's a few BOA ones that I don't think you guys want to go to get confused, but,
That's what, Jim would remember, but, Lynn Markham from the WSP.
I think Karen signed up for some.
Yeah.
That was the only one I heard back from.
It's good. They're good, really good.
Where are they at?
Oh, they're online.
There's one in 15 minutes.
They last how long?
Usually an hour, I think they.
Hour, but I think like 40 minutes of webinar and then some.
Board of Adjustment go last night.
The one request was denied.
Any other future agenda items from anybody?
We can't predict when we'll see ag amendments. I just mentioned we were working on it.
I still wish we could get stuff out to the towns and comments from them, you know.
Well, I mean, we have to talk, we could maybe put that on the agenda if you want to talk about adjusting the application submittal timeframe. If we back that up, then I could get notices out to the townships. You know, that could always be an agenda item next month if you wanted to talk about that.
I think so, yeah.
Okay, we can do that.
I'd like to see more comments
Town input.
from towns than what we've been getting.
Right.
Like, some of them are just, after the fact, we get the comments.
Well, and then we're kind of assuming that no news means it's okay, and it's a little perilous to do that, really.
I know you tell people to put in CUPs that, you know, top of town.
Yeah, we can't force them though, you know, we suggest it, but.
Well, Oakland Township, don't they say you have to go through them before you can even?
Yep, they have an application process that they require.
So you have to get approved from Oakland before you can even advance it to here.
Yep.
Well, you know, Andy didn't go to the town right away, and because, well, he thought he didn't have to. And we kind of want him to. They don't have to, but.
Not required, no, and I can't force them to.
It's a matter of deciding whether you want to parse it that close, that just because it doesn't make me, I'm not going to, isn't necessarily the good way to go about it, right?
Yep. Everybody's adults and they have to figure it out on their own, how they want to proceed.
Now, wait a minute.
So,
What do
Using
you actually,
that adult term pretty loosely.
what do you actually tell people? You say it or do you put them in writing?
no, I say you should contact your town prior to submitting. There are times though that I get an application where I've never talked to anybody. All of a sudden, wow, I didn't even know this was coming in. Here, we got an application. So I mean,
Download it online.
yeah, all the forms are online. You don't have to call us before you submit stuff, so.
I've even told people and told the town, like in Jackson, that just because you haven't heard from zoning yet doesn't mean you can't put it on your agenda. The person calls you and says, I'm gonna apply for something, I wanna get on the agenda, that's okay, you don't have to wait to a formal notice from us.
Yeah.
Right? And some of these are things, well, county has notified us, we're not putting it on the agenda. Well, then that just throws the whole thing for at least a month out of kilter. So if they talk to us first, right?
And we have to go back and talk to
Then
the town.
they can get on the town agenda if they take the initiative to do that. But we've been talking a little bit about getting the towns association, you know, talk about this, and when people come in, respond, you know, always. And if you will need more time, tell us, we'll accommodate you, right? But we have to know that in order to do it.
Dewey does it all the time.
Mhm. There are towns, obviously, that are probably more engaged than others.
Yes.
Some, I think, even if we asked for input, they probably would not even respond, even if we requested it. So, you know, it's just all how they want to operate.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's everyone's different, every board is different, just like this committee's different, no? Thanks to you guys.
Sure.
There have been a few changes in campgrounds also, right? Some of them have sold.
Oh, yeah.
DeForest.
DeForest sold, I heard, Highway 70 is for sale.
Eagles Ridge or whatever it's called up on the north.
Yeah.
Yep, that one was sold too, that was earlier this spring.
Yep, that one was sold, yep, so there's some, and I think the one on Spirit Lake, Birchwood, I think, was for sale a couple months ago. I remember talking to somebody about that one, so yeah, they're.
Now, and one, you had talked about the one out in Lincoln,
Yes,
but he has not done anything, so.
that one I heard from his attorney, so who knows how that one will proceed, so,
Because it only lasted for 3 years, right?
yes.
So the one out on D?
On Ferida.
You got the driveways in and it's all blocked off.
Yep.
Okay.
Then I think there's a building back in there.
There is like a half-built, or maybe it's done now, shower house,
Storage or something, yeah.
shower building, I think. But it was supposed to be completed within that 3-year time frame. It's been 4 years and not complete, so that one we might have some litigation on.
You notify him that 3 years was up there?
Yep,
Okay. That's why you heard.
and that's why his attorney contacted me, yes.
Is there any more going on with any of the townships on the, putting a fee per camping site to offset the police, fire, and.
I've only heard about Oakland and like $150, some number I've heard
Yeah.
recently. I don't know. I haven't seen anything formal yet.
They've had a meeting on it.
Yeah.
They haven't passed it in the ordinance yet. One of the things that I also heard from a town board member was when they give out it isn't a permit, I think it's a town permit to have the campground, then they have the right to go on, town board member has the right to go on the campground to inspect.
We have that same right.
Yeah, the county does, but
Yep.
this is the town one.
Okay.
And they were gonna enforce the 8-month one.
Yeah, I, heard that too. I don't know how they're gonna do that, but I guess good luck. Yeah, so.
Well, I asked the question on the one up in Webb Lake, how do you enforce it? You turn the water out.
Mhm.
Well, I know that's what they do at DeForest too, and I know that Eagle Ridge does that.
But if a person wants to go there, snowmobiling,
They can bring a 5-gallon bucket of water.
according to the town of Oakland, no.
That's gonna be a hard one to enforce.
That's why they get the right to go on.
That's why I'm glad they're enforcing it and not me.
The only way they can do that is wait till it snows and see if there's any tracks.
The campground in the village of Grassford gives the deadline, and so the campers are to be gone by that time, typically in late October.
Yeah.
But the real rub was when the definition of campers changed from the camping unit to the person. You know, the unit can stay in the state code, but the person has to leave for a day and then come back and start their 8 months all over. And that's the level of scrutiny the state's doing, pretty hard to enforce.
I'll make a motion.
Motion to adjourn. Sure.
Second.
All in favor?
Now we can chit chat.
Thank you.
What?
Almost till noon, like it used to be.
I was hoping we were gonna be done at 10:30, that was my guess, and